Welcome everybody to, particularly to those that are watching this online. And so I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting and the lands from which our audience are joining us, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to those who may be watching this event. My name is Anthea Hancock. I'm the CEO of the Scanlon Research Institute, and I'm delighted to welcome our guests to this launch of our latest narrative, It's Not Just Cricket, Sport, Social Cohesion and Belonging. Our guests for this moderated conversation are Vanessa Murray, the author of this narrative, who is also a writer and journalist and cricket mum. Melina Asthana, who is a principal lawyer, a sports advocate, founder of Multicultural Women in Sport, and one of Cricket Australia's 54 multicultural ambassadors. And Satish Rajendra, the founder and president of the Brisbane Super Kings Cricket Club. So to kick off our conversation, I'm going to turn first to Vanessa. Vanessa, how did your own experience as a cricket mum shape your understanding of sport as a site for social cohesion?
Thanks, Anthea. Well, like many parents, I took my kids along to our local cricket club in search of a first experience of team sport. And there I discovered a strong sense of community. Grassroots cricket clubs around Australia are volunteer run, and there's always something to do. It's a place that really does invite the whole family to turn up and pitch in. This included opportunities to meet people from diverse backgrounds who live in our local neighbourhood, including South Asian Australian families who have a strong affinity for cricket. Now, Australia considers itself a proud sporting nation, and sporting environments are places where people of all walks of life come together. As one of Australia's 4 main sporting codes, cricket exists in both personal and public realms. And in this way, cricket is about much more than cricket. It's a site for social interaction and cohesion, which is what the title of the narrative, It's Not Just Cricket, is alluding to.
Thank you, Vanessa. I wondered, though, what actually drew you to this particular story or series of stories, and why did you think it was important to tell it now, regardless of the fact that it happens to be cricket season?
Yes, although just finishing. Well, Australia and South Asia have a lot of things in common, from our regional proximity and trade partnerships to our shared love of cricket. And the South Asian diaspora is Australia's fastest growing diaspora population, with people of a South Asian cultural background now making up more than 6% of the total population. So, as part of doing this research, I've had lots of really wonderful conversations with people who identify as South Asian or South Asian Australian, who feel deeply connected to and through cricket, with several going so far as to say that cricket is in their DNA. Over the past 2 decades, as the South Asian diaspora has steadily grown, its members have sought to become increasingly present and active in cricket. In fact, I learned that for many diaspora members, an awareness of Australia's cricketing culture and a desire to connect with that as part of establishing themselves here contributed to their decision to migrate to Australia. And this work is especially important now, as for many, it has turned out that those early experiences of Australian cricket did not feel as familiar or as welcoming as they had hoped. And to find that psychological and cultural safety that we all need to feel a sense of belonging and worth, they often feel driven to leave mainstream Anglo-centric clubs and start their own more multicultural cricket clubs where they can have a say in how things are done. So there's a real opportunity here for cricket and for Australia to reshape one of its seminal cultural spaces to be truly relevant and inclusive.
So just picking up on that, Vanessa, and talking about people starting their own cricket clubs, Satish, your journey from international student to founder of one of Australia's largest multicultural cricket clubs is really quite astonishing. What motivated you to start the Brisbane Super Kings?
Thank you all. So as Vanessa mentioned, when I came here first, I just joined the local cricket club, and I felt that they can do a little bit more to encourage the migrant community or South Asian community or multicultural community. It was a little bit dominating with the white culture, but that is like, this is in 2004. But then I thought like, okay, because anyone who comes and join, if they are super skilled, they will use them, or they will allocate a good position. But if they are average, they just left alone. So I just thought like, okay, I think we just need a home where we can showcase our 100% ability and the skills, and then we can prove to the bigger audience that yes, okay, we have potential to compete in a higher level. So that made me to start a home. We just started very small, and then there's a lot of support from everyone. That's why this is the best country to live in the world. So the support was enormous and amazing. And yeah, now we are on the South Brisbane side. We are number one. So that's
congratulations on that. But how
you.
with such diverse participants in the club, how do you make sure that everybody is seen and heard and valued in the process?
We just like, especially the South Asian community, we always get everything done by a phone call or face to face. Initially the clubs or organizations here, they just prefer to have maybe email or a text. Like they don't allow you to, like, they don't, because they're all volunteers, they don't want to spend their time. But whereas we work 24 hours, anytime anyone can contact us, anyone can do ask question, anyone can like come onto the ground and ask question. So they felt very welcomed, comfortable, and then word of mouth, because one person, like if you go to this club, you just tell whatever is your concern or whatever your thing, they will immediately take action. So it just spread around, and then slowly everyone started coming and joining. But we were very careful, because we don't want to affect our neighbors or clubs around us. So we said like, look, the policy is this, wherever you go, the policy is this. Yes, we have some flexibility, and but the rules are same in every club. So we gave that welcoming culture, language, and made them comfortable, and that made us both ways easy.
Yeah, so effectively setting the standard that you want to achieve, and then allowing everybody to participate within that.
Yes,
that's really remarkable. So Melina, just you've really advocated tirelessly for women in sport. I wondered if you might talk a little bit to whether or not there are particular unique barriers for South Asian women facing cricket, and then what is the role of these multicultural clubs in overcoming some of those barriers?
So thank you, Anthea. Great to be here and for the launch of this sport. So I think cricket is one of the more popular sport amongst South Asian women. So you'll see them participating more in cricket than most sport. But women of South Asian backgrounds do face a number of barriers generally in participating in sport. So for example, for South Asian people, the focus is usually on academics. There's also a fear of contact sport, though cricket is not that much contact driven as some other sport are. They also patriarchal backgrounds, gender norms, and the traditional role of women in a family unit as a primary caregiver or homemakers, which excludes them from sporting environments. There's economic barriers, safety or perceived lack of safety. There's also time constraints and lack of flexibility because of the enormous load on women as well. So they cannot commit to ongoing participation. There's also a lack of appropriate, safe, and accessible infrastructure, including transport to get to sporting facilities. Many don't have cars, and sometimes they have to travel a long distance to get to a sporting facility with no public transport. In addition, sporting environments are not very welcoming. Sport in Australia is mainly seen as Anglo male driven, can be perceived as aggressive as well, and doesn't cater to the special needs of diverse women like hijabs and longer clothing, etc. So I wanted to shift this narrative, change this, and therefore I started my not-for-profit Multicultural Women in Sport for exactly helping women overcome these barriers and helping clubs become more safe and inclusive for women of diverse backgrounds. So I do this by working closely with big sporting organizations in helping them restructure the format of the sport or getting more diverse women into their already existing programs. I also do a lot of advocacy at grassroots level and in getting clubs to be inclusive of women of diverse backgrounds, letting them, creating more conservative environments for them, and also educating women of diverse backgrounds on why they should participate in sport. So I think this advocacy and the advocacy that has been done by others has led to a greater understanding of the barriers faced by women of South Asian background and concerted action to address this. Even Cricket Australia has a multicultural action plan, and a lot of organizations are now taking an intersectional approach to diversity, and making sure that we're looking at other strands of diversity and their barriers and additional barriers that women may face. For example, women of color who may be from LGBTIQ plus background and also have a disability. And so clubs are also, as you mentioned, and Satish mentioned, the clubs are becoming increasingly conscious of some of these issues and are taking conscious measures to include women and create spaces that are welcoming for them. And having someone going into a club which looks like you, which reflects the community you come from, obviously feels more welcoming. And there might be flexibility in terms of, because they understand the cultural background, there might be more flexibility in women participating as well. There may be it may be a whole family thing. When you go to a South Asian club, obviously women feel more motivated to be part of it, and families feel more comfortable being part of these sporting environments. They come and support the whole family when they're playing. So I think these clubs particularly have a great role to play in promoting women of diverse backgrounds.
Absolutely, and it's really important for there to be advocates such as yourself that are very clearly able to spell out what some of those barriers are and how they can be overcome. So, but I am interested in you in particular, and whether or not sport has played a particular role in your life and in your experiences of belonging in Australia.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. I always talk about the role of sport in my journey as accidental. I was really not very sporty growing up, and I probably got one medal for an intersectional race as a kid in my entire life. Growing up in India, even though I come from a higher socioeconomic background, sports was never a priority. It was all about academics, and I'm a lawyer. After moving here, I was really inspired by the sporting culture. I saw people running, walking, cycling to work, and organized sport around me. I took up running, and I've now run a number of half marathons. Sport helped me increase my confidence, give me the strength of mind and body, helped me overcome stressful situations, and generally helped me get accustomed to the Australian way of life and workforce, particularly, with my knowledge of footy, without which you really cannot survive in Victoria. So in Australia, you need to be part of sport to remain relevant. But also sport provides a common ground to come together. When you are participating in sport, you are all equal. It doesn't matter what your background or race or color is. You also have that sense of belonging to a team, the spirit of camaraderie, a support system that you become part of. And that really helps you in finding a sense of belonging in a new country. As I got more and more involved and founded my own not-for-profit and worked with other sporting organizations, more opportunities in sport came about. So I was appointed an ambassador for a number of sport, including cricket before and again now, and thereafter was appointed to a number of boards of sporting organizations, associations, because of my background in law and governance. I also serve on sports tribunals and the Australian Sports Commission Advisory. And all of that is my way of giving back to the community, and therefore creates an even greater sense of belonging.
Marlena, can you remember a sort of a particular moment when that relationship of sport to your relationship to being a part of the Australian community actually registered for you? Was it the time when you ran the first half marathon, or was there an actual moment that you can recall?
It's even before I moved to Australia. Funnily enough, I was engaged to my husband, and he took me to a footy game on a date. And he does, and suddenly I see his team is losing. He gets up and walks out, and I'm wondering what's happened. He's forgotten that I'm even sitting there, and I look at him, and then he suddenly realizes he's left me behind, and he comes to get me back. But I just realized he's done the walkout. At that moment, I really realized how passionate people are about sport in Australia, and that you really need to be part of the sporting system, even for your own personal family setting, and then work-wise, and the conversations. And then, of course, when I started running, was just an amazing feeling to know that I can also do this, that it's not someone else, and that I didn't grow up with sport, but I can take it up at any time, and that it can help me, make friends, peer support, and all the good things that come with sport. So definitely that was fantastic.
Thank you. Satish, can you remember a particular moment in your life when sport became important to you?
There are a lot of moments, but the best moment was when we went to GABA for the India series. They called me to hold the Indian flag with all the Indian players. In India, when we grow up, it's not even possible to go near, but I didn't, and then they called my family also to the ground, and so that moment was, I just thought like it's a great moment, in front of 55,000 people and mostly Indian supporters, and that was a great moment. But there are many.
Vanessa, you describe yourself as a cricket mum.
Mm.
Was sport an important part of your life before you had children, or was having the children the thing that sort of brought it all together?
Yeah, I'm a New Zealander by birth and grew up in New Zealand, and cricket wasn't so much on the radio then as New Zealand rugby. And one of my early memories is my parents taking me to a rugby game actually in protest against a Springbok tour in the early 1980s. That's really stuck with me as, sport is a place for social and political action. But probably coming back to it as an adult, it has been through my kids and realizing how important sport is for young people, for families. We're living in a world that's increasingly insular and isolated, and sport is one of the ways that we can get out, get into community, meet people in our neighborhoods, and really, remain active and become part of things.
Well, interesting you should say that, because in the narrative you do talk about things like systems literacy, sort of understanding how the structural elements work within sport, between community and the more elite levels. As you were putting the narrative together, what actually stood out to you as being something that really does need to be addressed sooner rather than later?
Within cricket, yes. Well, in this context, systems literacy means understanding how the Australian cricketing system works, being able to connect the dots between all the moving parts and being able to navigate it in order to get through. One of the themes that emerged quite early on in the research is that the way cricket is structured and experienced in South Asia is different from the way it is structured and experienced here in Australia. So we can't assume that migrants, particularly new migrants, understand how the Australian cricketing system works right off the bat, or how to successfully get involved and participate. So in turn, it's unrealistic to continue doing something the way it's always been done in the face of changing demographics and cultural norms. In this way, some clubs are at risk of falling out of touch. One of the most concerning and urgent things I learned is that organisations that are in control of cricket do not have a handle on how many umpires and coaches there are, who they are, or what level of cultural safety they represent in and for their communities. At a grassroots level, these people are in positions of considerable power and authority. They're literally representing the institution of Australian cricket. So this lack of oversight and regulation I found quite concerning, because without it, there is no assurance that those umpires and coaches are on board with providing culturally safe spaces for people. And sadly, alongside many stories of strength and autonomy and resilience in the narrative, there are some examples of overt racism, discrimination and bias that illustrate exactly that.
So, Vanessa, Malina just mentioned the Multicultural Action Plan that Cricket Australia has launched and is enacting. Do you feel that is actually able to make a difference in this space?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that only came out in December 2023, and it contains 10 very robust concrete strategies for addressing shortcomings across the board. There are also action plans focused on reconciliation, women and girls in cricket, and sustainability. So cricket is definitely a space to watch.
Oh, fantastic. So Satish, Vanessa sort of outlined in broad terms some of those challenges that exist. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've had to deal with within the club that you created? And what have you done in order to address some of those? I know you've mentioned some of the things that you do right now to ensure people have a voice within the club, but are there bigger challenges that you're having to deal with, structural type issues, and how are you going about confronting those?
Yeah, so the point Vanessa mentioned, the Cricket Australia is taking a lot of measures, and then it just flows to Queensland Cricket, and then from Queensland Cricket to all the 3 levels of the government. So because we need everyone to be together to get things done. So to start with, we had an infrastructural issue because we are a very small club. We just started with just 1 net. Like if for cricket, you need like multiple nets. You need a lot of coaches. You need a lot of funding for those coaches. We can't rely everything on volunteers. Like, infrastructure was the main thing. So, and also we need change rooms separately for the boys and girls, especially for girls, because, now, as Molina mentioned, there's a lot of South Asian girls who are comfortable, and their dads, like especially if they are only daughters or 2 daughters in the family, their dads are now encouraging them to play cricket, and moms are supporting them, which never used to be like that, because they always go into the studies after they go 14, 15, they just go automatically into the studies. So now, because they are coming out and they are participating, they're doing so. Infrastructure was our core thing, and to get one thing done, like now we are just working on our nets. 1 net costs like around 150,000, so we need like 5 nets, nearly $1 million.
Oh, wow.
When I said, yeah, so which we cannot be done by just one person. So we submitted our proposal starting from the council to the local government, then the federal government, then the governments. We need supports from the Queensland Cricket. Queensland Cricket needs support from Cricket Australia. So we have some problem, but overnight you can't fix everything. We know this is going to take a long time, but our aim, everyone's aim is like, mainly to, now the younger generation is slowly diverting into that phone culture, or the screen culture, which is dominating a little bit, like recently last 4 or 5 years. So everyone is aware of it, everyone have kids. So if we don't provide these infrastructures, and we are not going to get any sports, so the government is aware of it, and yesterday in Queensland, government announced 2032 pathways. If you guys check the Olympic pathways, some amazing projects coming, and amazing fundings released, and cricket is going to be part of the Olympic 2032 as well. So there is struggle, but there is a pathway for it. We just all have to work together and be patient, and if you miss anything, it's fine, you just got to keep fighting, but we all need to join hands to get this done.
I think your patience is admirable. It is really interesting because in the narrative, you do talk about that relationship between the different bodies that operate within cricketing in Australia, and that ability to navigate and know, but also to have the sort of patience that Satish has just talked about is really incredible. Melina, you've worked on a number of national strategies for these sorts of things. What does effective inclusion actually look like beyond just participation numbers? And how have you gone about navigating these different structural elements in order to get the sort of outcomes that you've been advocating for?
So when D&I is built into the fabric of an organization, it is part of your overall strategy. When it informs everything that you do at an organization, that is when sport is truly inclusive. And when that happens, we see people of diverse backgrounds in every area of the sport, not just playing it, but as part of the workforce, in officiating, coaching, umpiring roles, as volunteers, as board members, as spectators, as fans, as in journalism, in media. So effective inclusion also means that people feel welcome when they come to a sporting event or join a club, and they feel a sense of belonging. If you went to a club and the only person you saw was a white Anglo man or a woman for that matter, you're unlikely to want to be part of that club, because the perception will be that the club doesn't cater to people like yourself and that you will not be made to feel welcome there. This can only happen when clubs make an effort to create inclusive spaces. For example, as I mentioned before, letting women play with hijabs or longer clothing, and have facilities like prayer rooms. Also, as Satish mentioned, separate change room for women. A lot of clubs even currently don't have change rooms, separate change rooms for women. And that becomes particularly difficult for women of diverse backgrounds because they come from conservative backgrounds. The language that is used, sometimes you need to change the language, the narrative in your club. You need the food choices that are provided sometimes. You can't just serve sausage rolls and party pies because that's not going to, half of the population will be excluded because Hindus don't eat beef and Muslims don't eat pork. And understanding the specific nuances of people, when clubs do that, they become, I think when they get on that journey of understanding those issues and take active measures to address that, that is when I think that is what effective inclusion will look like. I guess I've navigated that over time. I've been advocating for this since a long time, since even when people were not talking about these issues, when intersectionality was not a thing, when we were not looking at any of that. So I've seen the change. I've been part of it. I feel like I've contributed to this. The change that is coming about now through the advocacy that I do, and internally and externally. So as externally, as much as I could, I was advocating for things and I was helping organizations become more inclusive. Now being part of the organizations, serving on boards gives me a little bit more, I guess, and into being able to do that. I'm able to impact policy making. I'm able to bring about a change in organizations by building it into strategy and making sure that we are bringing everyone along the journey. So I think as an outsider first and then an insider, and be also now advising the Australian Sports Commission on a number of their strategies and policies, being part of policy making has really helped me sort of ensure that we have effective, inclusive places in sport and for everyone.
Yeah, so Melina, I'm really thrilled that you're actually able to operate, to participate at that sort of higher level to influence those things. But if just thinking back to if there were people that are Anglo-European that are generally running some of these cricket clubs and they'd like to actually start to be more inclusive, what's the first couple of steps that they need to take? Because, you know, you've certainly got a long list of the sorts of things that they could do. What's the first one or two things that they should really start to do in order to get the message out that they actually want to be more inclusive?
I think the reflection, the composition of the organization, the external, I guess what it looks like needs to change. So the makeup of the organization needs to change. When you're outward facing, your staff, your umpires, your coaches, even your players should reflect the diversity that you see on the streets.
So how do they go about recruiting those people if they're the first ones? How do you overcome that barrier between we're all white but we don't want to be any longer? How do we actually get the first coach in, the first players in, the first person on our board? What's the message they need to send to get to that stage?
I think it has to be a conscious effort. And people don't necessarily believe in quotas and targets and things like that, but I actually do. I do believe that it sends a strong message. Some people will say I'm on a particular board because they're filling the diversity quota. I don't mind that. That's fine. Bring me in. Otherwise, I will not have any into the system. Bring me in and I will bring the change. So I think that conscious effort needs to be made by these organizations, that we will take that one step. We will trust our judgment in bringing in one person who may be of a diverse background. Perhaps things will change. And that's a catalyst effect, because when I'm in a leadership position, I make sure I interview another person, a person of a diverse background, no matter what. It is my policy. I will, if there's all Anglo people, I will go out and extend my search so that I get one more person. So I think that brings about that creates change, one person, then another, then another, then another. They're all catalysts in that change. You need to take that one, I guess, risk, if you want to call it, or trust in your judgment in bringing that one person along to create that change.
Great, thank you, Melina. Satish, what about you? What advice would you give for those more mainstream cricket clubs that actually might want to be more inclusive?
Look, to be honest, we are actually, struggling to get this done, because what's happening is it's all run by volunteers, right? So our club, we started and we welcomed everyone, but now it's become dominant. Only South Asians are in our club. Whoever was white background, they are just leaving to, even though we were very welcoming, we always give priority to them. We make sure they're comfortable, but the kids, I think it will take some generations to be like, if you see US, they are many generations, they have seen all colors, all races. So they now, you can see Kamala Harris, who was like past vice president, they can accept them as a leader, or it's because it's multiple generation. Whereas Australia, it's like probably 2-3 generation. We only started migrating from here like from 70s and 80s. So it may take some time. We sometimes go to experts like Molina and ask, like, what structure, because we got some experts in Queensland Cricket and other organizations. We invite them, we tell them to give a speech. We haven't been successful yet, because it's all either an Indian-based club or a Sri Lankan-based club or a Caucasian-based club. That's how it works. But when we play together, we are all fine. But it's just that thing need to be changed, and we are doing our thing, but we still haven't got our job done for that. And I think it will probably take some time.
It's always a process. Nothing's ever perfect. Vanessa, when you were putting this narrative together, you talked to people across a whole range of different multicultural clubs, but within the systems and the structural elements that exist at all different levels. From your perspective, what do you think true inclusion actually looks like? What do you think the things are that are going to sort of foster this just diversity across the board?
Sure. Well, just to touch on what Satish was ending on there, I do think putting the onus on for making this cultural shift onto grassroots clubs is asking a lot, as we know that community sports clubs and the people volunteering to keep them running are already under a lot of strain. Some of the people I spoke to, including Satish, are literally putting in 30, 40-hour weeks voluntarily into their clubs, alongside other commitments. One strategy in Cricket Australia's Multicultural Action Plan is the rollout of cultural awareness and unconscious bias training for all of its staff throughout Australia. So hopefully that will trickle down to a grassroots level too. But a truly inclusive environment would be one in which top to bottom representation was reflective of the people involved at grassroots level. It means that we would see many more South Asian Australians progressing from cricket pathways and into professional teams, and also being invited into board and committee meeting rooms where the decision making happens around the country.
Yeah. I'm curious as to, because you talked to Usman Khawaja and others, I'm just wondering what or got information from them about their foundations. Just what role do you think the individual elite cricketers have in fostering this sort of inclusion?
Sure. Well, they are, of course, the role models of the day for people from their own communities, but also for Australia at large. And Usman in particular, is an incredible role model within sport, but also just within society at large. He's very outspoken and calls out things that he, sees as unfair or inequitable. So people like Usman Khawaja and also Alana King, who's also focused on in the narrative, really do have an important part to play in keeping on playing the great sport that they play, but also being those role models in a wider sense too.
Yeah. Satish, what do you think the role of these elite cricketers is in fostering inclusion at the community level?
Okay, that's a very good point. I think Usman Khawaja is really amazing in that. He's very close to our club. He have attended many times our club, and but so he himself has said that if there is a, so say for example, Australian cricket team or a Queensland team or Victoria team, there is probably one person of South Asian community playing. That doesn't mean that there is no skills, but he said like the selectors will only select you only if you are extraordinary. Say for example, if there is a Caucasian or a South Asian, they both are same batters, same level, same skills. The selectors will only select you only if you're above them. If they find that you both are same level, they are comfortable to select the Caucasian because they can easily mingle with the team. They can easily, mingle with the culture. So where it need to be changed is this has to come from the top. So luckily we have IPL, which is number 3 tournament in the world, and very popular. It's like a English football or a NBA. So luckily that product there is a good example. And if you see there is all levels of coaching staffs, all levels of supporting staff. It starts from Australian, England, South African, Indian. So there is a big mix there, and that's a good example. And same like that, Cricket Australia and Queensland Cricket, whoever is that selector, whoever is supporting staffs, whoever is in charge, they need to have that multicultural background of all. Say example, if there is a selector, make sure you have 3 selectors in all multicultural backgrounds, especially cricket. There is amazing skills for cricket. Like rugby, maybe South Asian, there won't be enough people in South Asian, so you can't put someone as a head selector. But cricket, we can find definitely people. So it has to come from the start. I don't know where it's going to start. Like even the Queensland Cricket Board, there is not much South Asian. I think in Victoria Cricket Board, probably one there, and I don't think they exist now as well. So we need to start from the start and then goes down to the floor, because from the grassroots we can't change it, because we are too much under pressure to run the day-to-day business. We cannot change these things.
Yeah. So somebody like Usman, for instance, has a fairly substantial responsibility, but also a bit of a burden in that process of trying to help others to better understand how to make these sorts of changes and how to be more open and inclusive, at the same time as he's trying to, maintain his own career in that space. But there's a lot that we put on, a lot of expectations on those individuals.
Oh, look, he is very brave. If you see what happened last week in the media, he have a genuine record of hamstring, and he went didn't play for Queensland. But then, the journalist or the cricket commentators, they just said, oh, you should never be playing international, because he didn't give importance to the Sheffield, which was like, which puts a lot of burden on him. Because he has to make sure his career is not affected because of supporting these things, which is I really salute him for he's coming out and giving a proper answer, which may jeopardize his national selection. But he was very brave. He said what it is, and good on him.
Yeah. Mm. So, Melina, how important are the role models within women's cricket as well, at that elite level? What's their responsibilities in relation to building these the sorts of things you're advocating for?
I think female cricketers have an equal responsibility. And I don't want to say the word burden, because we don't want to burden everyone with that responsibility as well. But take on as much as they can. So many of them are, they're proving it through their play. They're proving it through their, that they're as good as men. That is one way of creating space for yourself, for creating space for women. For Alana King, for example, is of Indian heritage. She's doing amazingly well in cricket. So there is, now a perception that there is South Asian women who are playing well. And a number of Australian, athletes, girls play in Indian IPL as well. So there's that cross-cultural exchange as well that happens, that helps create that understanding of each other. So that's definitely there. But there's also people like Mel Jones who are doing an amazing job. She's actually helped with setting up the women's IPL in India. And she's recently been involved in the Afghan women's cricket team, that bringing them out into and creating an awareness of what these women have gone through, and what we need to do to support them. And the cricket match that just happened at the Junction Oval before the Women's Ashes was absolutely fantastic. It brought out people, the whole media was there, the governor was there, ministers were there, but everyone came out in support of the women who have been, who have fled from their country, do not have a right to participate the same way as their men do. So there is great work being done by role models like Mal Jones and Lisa Stalaker as well. I can't forget the great work she's doing. Alana King, newcomer. I'm sure there'll be many more to come. We're seeing more South Asian women rise to the ranks, play in under-19s and others. So we will see them play for Australia as well, and that will bring about a shift in the narrative.
Yeah. So as we bring this together and conclude our webinar, and I'm delighted that all of you have been so open about these things. If we were to think about Australia in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, how would you describe what you would like to see if we were able to be as inclusive as we possibly could? Is there a way of describing what sport looks like in Australia in 10 years' time if it is a lot more inclusive, perhaps, than it has been to date? So, Melina?
Yes, I think I mentioned this before, and I've heard this all throughout this webinar as well, that a truly inclusive multicultural ecosystem would mean that we see people of all cultural backgrounds and heritages represented in every aspect of the sport, whether it is on or off the field, as players, as fans, as administrators, as officials, as board members, as senior officials, as media, and as founders of clubs. So I want to see more people like myself being reflected in the sporting ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melina. Satish, what about you? If you think 10 years down the track, apart from having 5 nets, what's the other things you'd like to be able to see in the way that community cricket is played?
I think in 10 years or maybe in 15 years, I'm pretty sure Australian national team, especially the girls, I think at least 30 to 40% playing there will be girls from South Asian background, because the girls and they're amazingly performing, within our club. We whoever started, they're achieving great moments. With the men's, I'm not sure, because the talent pool in men's are extremely high, and so hopefully the board and all the work we do will convert into equal opportunity for all, and look, that's good for the country as well, like, because for example, 2032 Olympic, everyone is thinking that only India is going to win, but if the Cricket Australia and all the cricket boards work together and bring the real talent, you never know, Australia may win the Olympics. So the high chance for India, but in 10 years, let's see, or 8 years, let's see, if we all work together, that will be the outcome for Australia to win the gold medal in cricket in Olympic.
Oh, wouldn't that be a fabulous thing? So Vanessa, as the final word and the author of the narrative, which is really thrilling to being able to bring it together and to get it out there. And I do encourage everybody to try to read that remarkable piece of work that you've done. What would you like to say as sort of the final words around where Australia could go if we were completely inclusive?
Sure. Well, I have a few comments. First, at a grassroots level, I'd really like to see all grassroots players and teams around Australia supported with places to train, not just those who have historically been entitled to cricketing grounds and club rooms. I say this because I've learned that for many of the newer South Asian-led clubs around the country, finding a place to train can be hard. It can also be expensive. Several of the clubs I spoke to have to hire indoor training facilities and pay for their own pockets for this because they don't have access to council-controlled grounds. And at most indoor training facilities, they can only practice batting and bowling. They can't practice fielding at all. This, of course, is affecting their game and doesn't put them on a level playing field with more well-established clubs. That's one point. Another, in relation to gender, at the moment, even though cricket is Australia's highest paying professional sport for women, a gender pay gap still exists. A couple of years back, New Zealand and India both granted pay parity for professional women players with their men. So I'm optimistic that Australian cricket will soon be doing the same. Ultimately, I believe the responsibility for making meaningful change lies within the upper echelons of Australian cricket. Fundamentally, shaking up the hierarchy in the ways that cricket is delivered and investing in and better supporting its volunteer workforce will play a major part in creating a more socially just, welcoming and inclusive cricketing culture for all of Australia.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and thank you very much for having pulled this together. I would say that reading this narrative is really illuminating, not only because it tells stories that often aren't necessarily told, but also because you make it so very personal about the individuals that you talk to, and it's just a really delightful thing to read. So I hope everybody that's watching this webinar will reach out. You can find that particular webinar on our website, www.scanloninstitute.org.au, which you can find other narratives and other essays that we've also produced. So finally, I would like to thank our speakers, Vanessa, Melina and Satish, and the audience for tuning in. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.